Democracy was born over 2,500 years ago in Athens, Greece. But the Athenian democracy was nothing like the democracy we know today. In the Athens, you were the government. There were no representatives nor politicians. You yourself would go to the assembly and say yes or no on every decision. Citizens weren't just voters. They could be randomly selected to run government offices for short terms. It was like a political lottery. Every citizen had the chance to govern, not just the rich or powerful. But let's not romanticize it. It was only for free male citizens. Women, slaves, and foreigners couldn't vote. The system was direct. Citizens voted on everything, but only a small percentage actually got a say. Socrates believed that decision-making should be based on knowledge and wisdom, not popularity. He thought that most people aren't educated enough to make informed political decisions. Democracy allows unqualified people to vote, which can lead to bad leaders getting elected. Socrates saw that in Athenian democracy, leaders weren't necessarily chosen for their wisdom or morals. They were often chosen for their charisma and persuasive speech. Imagine a debate. One person has years of experience, deep knowledge, but speaks dryly. Another has flashy words, makes big promises, and plays to people's fears or hopes. In a democratic vote, the second person usually wins. Not because they're the better leader, but because they made people feel something. This, according to him, was the biggest flaw. The masses could be swayed by emotion and rhetoric rather than logic and truth. Human beings are wired to be selfish. According to psychology, especially theories from evolutionary psychology, our brains prioritize survival, safety, and personal gain above all else. Maslow's hierarchy of needs says it clearly. Before we can care about equality or justice, we care about food, shelter, job security, and tax breaks. That's why voting often becomes personal. You're a middle-class worker? You'll vote for tax cuts. You're a student? You'll vote for loan forgiveness. You're a farmer? You want subsidies. A Stanford study found that emotional appeals in campaigns were 2 times more effective in changing voting decisions than logical ones. So what exactly affects voting decisions? Psychology breaks it down into 4 major factors. Self-interest. As we just saw, people often ask, "What's in it for me?" We think we're voting smart, but often end up choosing short-term gains over long-term stability. Social identity. We vote like the people around us. Your religion, race, region, even your friend group influences you. This can create echo chambers. Even if a candidate is bad for the country, if your community supports them, you often go with the herd. Emotion over logic. Candidates who make you feel something win. That's why political speeches are designed to stir emotions, not present Excel sheets. Loss aversion. We hate losing more than we like winning. So when politicians say they'll take your jobs, we panic vote. According to a recent survey across 31 nations, 54% adults are dissatisfied with how democracy is functioning in their countries. Imagine this. You live in a town with 100 people. 80 of them are rich, 20 are poor. A candidate promises to cut welfare and reduce taxes. The 80 love it and vote him in. But the remaining 20? They lose their safety net. Democracy worked. But fairness didn't. This is why ethics, not just numbers, should guide governance. In 2016, the United Kingdom held a referendum asking a simple question: should the UK remain in the European Union or leave it? The result? 52% voted to leave. That 52% reshaped the lives of over 66 million people and generations to come. But what drove people that voted to want to leave? Sovereignty. Many believed the EU had too much control over British laws. Immigration fears. There was growing concern about immigrants taking jobs, heavily pushed by certain political campaigns. Economic anxiety. Some thought leaving the EU would allow the UK to negotiate better trade deals on its own. But here's what really happened. Post-vote analysis showed that many voters didn't fully understand the consequences. In fact, after the vote, "What is the EU?" became one of the most searched questions in the UK on Google. So of course, there were consequences. UK citizens lost the automatic right to live and work in 27 EU countries. Young people especially were hit hard. Businesses suddenly faced paperwork, border delays, and tariffs. Small companies suffered the most. By 2023, studies estimated the UK's economy was 5.5% smaller than it would have been if it had stayed in the EU. The UK now negotiates solo, while the EU negotiates as a bloc of 27 nations. Power dynamics shifted. Brexit threatened peace in Northern Ireland by creating a de facto trade border in the Irish Sea, reigniting old political tensions. As of early 2025, around 55% of Britons think it was wrong to leave the EU, while only about 30% believe it was the right decision. Public opinion is divided along party and referendum lines. Most 2016 Leave voters still support Brexit, but a significant minority, about 18%, now regret it. The next biggest flaw of a democracy is bad leaders stay in power until the next vote, no matter how harmful their actions are. In contrast, countries with parliamentary systems can vote out a prime minister mid-term through a vote of no confidence, like in the UK and Canada. But in presidential democracies, voters are often powerless for years once the ballot is cast. Have you ever wondered, what if democracy itself can create a pathway to tyranny? In 1932, Germany was struggling with economic depression and massive unemployment. After losing World War I, the country was humiliated, broke, and deeply unstable. The new government, the Weimar Republic, was democratic but deeply unpopular. Hyperinflation made money worthless. People lost their jobs, savings, and hope. And when people feel desperate, they don't just want freedom, they want order. They want a savior. The Nazi Party didn't seize power with a coup. They won the largest share of the vote in the 1932 elections. In 1933, Hitler was legally appointed Chancellor of Germany. Hitler used it as a pretext to pass the Enabling Act, which gave him the power to rule by decree. Just like that, Germany went from a democracy to a dictatorship. So, do you see how this example has gone so haywire? The majority supported policies that violated minority rights. Tyranny with public approval is still tyranny. If democracy has so many flaws, from slow decision-making to emotional voting, is there a better way to run a country? Let's understand the interesting case of China. China is not a democracy. China didn't follow the Western blueprint. No elections, no multi-party system, no free press in the Western sense. During the rule of Deng Xiaoping, he introduced economic liberalization without political liberalization. In just a few decades, it became the world's second-largest economy, lifted 800 million people out of poverty, and built some of the most advanced infrastructure on the planet. China's one-party system, led by the Chinese Communist Party, allows for long-term planning without the interruptions of elections. For example, high-speed rail was built across the country in just a few years. Entire cities were planned and constructed from scratch. Tech innovation hubs like Shenzhen rose from fishing villages to Silicon Valleys. Could a democracy do this? Maybe, but not as fast. And here's the twist. Many Chinese citizens are okay with it, as long as it brings stability and prosperity. Polls show high satisfaction rates with the government, especially compared to some chaotic democracies. Supporters of the China model argue it's not just autocracy, it's meritocratic authoritarianism. Party leaders go through decades of training, governance, and testing before rising to the top. In theory, that means the country is run by the most experienced bureaucrats, not the most popular politicians. But here's the flip side. Efficiency comes at the cost of individual liberty and transparency, and critics argue whether this system is sustainable. So, which system should we follow? That's the question that has kept philosophers, economists, and world leaders up at night for centuries. And the truth? There's no perfect answer. What if experts, not politicians, made decisions? That's the idea behind technocracy, rule by scientists, economists, and engineers who make rational, data-driven policies. Sounds ideal, right? But who decides who the experts are? And do people want to be ruled by someone they didn't choose? Maybe the real question isn't, which system is best? Maybe it's, how do we make any system work better for more people? Because whether it's a democracy, a technocracy, or something in between, the goal should always be the same: a government that works, listens, and evolves.